about race. Why race? Because it's a big issue. It's a big issue brought up by the Democrat parties. They try and paint the President of the United States as a racist, and Joe Biden has done so repeatedly. It is awful. And their goal here is to prevent or to try and persuade African Americans and Black Americans and other minorities to vote Democrat and not vote for Donald Trump. Donald Trump's been president for 47 months. And one of his priorities has been to do what he can to assist minority communities, particularly the African American and Black communities in this country. And he's done more than any president, and I mean this, since Abraham Lincoln. More than any president since Abraham Lincoln. Certainly more than Biden and Obama. Certainly more than Clinton. Criminal justice reform has been talked about repeatedly. He secured permanent and record funding for historically Black colleges and universities. They used to go hat in hand to the Oval Office and beg every year for some kind of stipend. Trump said, enough of that. Let's have a secure and regularized form of funding for our historically Black colleges. What else did he do? Opportunity zones. What's that? That's tax breaks for investing in low-income areas. What else did he do? Lowest Black, Hispanic, Asian, and woman unemployment in history until the pandemic hit. In history. And what else? Law and order. Law and order. This idea that minorities who live in cities where there's riots and looting and arson and criminality, that people in these communities support it is preposterous. It's outrageous. The President of the United States has condemned these Democrat liberal mayors and these Democrat liberal governors for not putting down the violence that's taking place in these cities. Joe Biden for months did not. And it's only recently that Joe Biden said, please don't riot. Even in Philadelphia, what's taking place in Philadelphia, where an individual charged the police with a knife and they shot him. And the looting and the rioting taking place at the Walmart and other stores, again, the Biden campaign puts out a milquetoast statement, basically claiming that perhaps there is some sort of discrimination taking place here. Well, Biden's real record on race is a disgrace, and it's one of the reasons the media never talk about it. But you have to go back and look at it. Biden is in no position to condemn anyone about race, particularly Trump, who's had a history of being very open and loving and compassionate towards all people of all races. I mean, look, he's hired tens of thousands of people, regardless of their race. Joe Biden has not done such a thing. Back in 1975, Biden said, I think the concept of busing, that we're going to integrate people so that they all have the same access and they learn to grow up with one another and all the rest, is a rejection of the whole movement of Black pride. He went on to say about desegregation was a rejection of the entire Black awareness concept, where Black is beautiful, Black culture should be studied, and the cultural awareness of the importance of their own identity, their own individuality. Biden opposed integration. He opposed integration, and he should have known better. 1977, in a quote which appears to come from a congressional hearing related to anti-busing legislation, Biden emphasized wanting to, quote, ensure we do have orderly integration of society, adding he was just not talking about education, but all of society. He then said, unless we do something about this, my children are going to grow up in a jungle. The jungle being a racial jungle with tensions having built so high that it's going to explode at some point. We've got to make some move on this. Even if you oppose busing, and many people did and do, including minorities, white people, and so forth, his comments are racist comments. They could be coming from a segregationist in the South. And speaking of Southern segregationists, they were good friends with Joe Biden. They have letters that reveal Joe Biden's friendship with many of these segregationists. I want you to know that I very much appreciate your help during this week's committee meeting in attempting to bring my anti-busing legislation to a vote. That is a letter to James Eastland, a well-known racist segregationist from Mississippi, that Biden wrote in June 30, 1977. He also said, I've been around so long, I worked with James Eastland. He was bragging about working with segregationists, that they were good friends, quote unquote. In 1998, a speech, then Joe Biden called 100,000 juveniles who'd been arrested for violent crimes in the United States, particularly minorities and Blacks, predators who, and I quote, who warrant exceptionally tough treatment. Predators, he said. There's about 100,000 of them, if you want to be rhetorically extreme about it, who are the predators. There are 100,000 real bad apples out there. 100,000 of the kids you read about in the front page of the newspaper every day. And then Robert Byrd, a disgrace embraced by the Democrat Party, obviously from West Virginia. He was the Grand Kleagle of the KKK. They didn't even have a KKK in West Virginia until Byrd created one, because West Virginia broke from Virginia during the Civil War to support the Union. And he said about Byrd upon his death, "We lost the Dean of the United States Senate, but also the state of West Virginia lost its most fierce advocate. As I said, I lost a dear friend." Biden called Byrd a tough, compassionate, outspoken leader, dedicated above all else to making life better for the people of the Mountain State. Who has some explaining to do on race and racism and bigotry? Joe Biden. Joe Biden. And yet they have managed through hundreds of millions of dollars in advertising and propaganda through the phony media to try and paint Trump as the racist, which he's not. I'll be right back.